It was a morning filled with sunlight and quiet prayers. I had been up since dawn, polishing the golden bangles my husband had placed on my wrists on our wedding day. They weren't just jewelry. They were memories of our first years together, of love that survived storms and sacrifices. Today, I wanted to pass them on to my son's bride. My heart believed it was the right thing to do, a gesture of blessing, a circle continuing. The house buzzed with wedding laughter. My son Armand looked so handsome, nervous but proud. I had waited years to see him in that moment. And when I saw his bride, Maya, step out in her red silk dress, she was radiant, beautiful in a way that made everyone stop and stare. I smiled, though somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Don't lose yourself in this joy too fast." I held out the bangles, wrapped carefully in a silk cloth. "These are yours now," I said softly. "They carry the blessings of our family." Maya looked at them, her lips curving into a polite smile, not the kind that reaches the eyes. "Thank you," she said, then turned her gaze elsewhere, as if gold meant little to her. My son smiled awkwardly, caught between us, and for a second I felt that strange distance only a mother can sense, the one that comes when her child belongs more to someone else. The celebrations went on, music and laughter filling the air. But I couldn't shake that small ache in my chest. At dinner, when I tried to serve Maya a sweet I'd made by hand, she waved it off and said lightly, "Oh, I don't eat these old-fashioned things." Everyone laughed. I joined them too, hiding the sting behind a smile. Later that evening, I sat alone in my room, folding away my old sari. Through the half-open door, I heard voices in the hallway, low, hurried whispers. It was Maya's voice, soft but sharp. "She won't even notice when they're gone," she said, followed by a giggle I didn't recognize. Bold, careless. My heart skipped. Gone? What was she talking about? I stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid to believe what I'd just heard. A mother's heart always knows when something precious is slipping away. Not just gold, but trust, peace, respect. The laughter outside faded into silence, but inside me, something heavy began to stir. That night, I placed my hands over my empty wrists and whispered a quiet prayer. I didn't know it then, but that whisper would be the start of a storm that would change everything. It had only been a few weeks since the wedding, but already, the rhythm of the house had changed. Where once there had been quiet prayers and the sound of my bangles echoing through the hallway, now there was laughter, loud, bright, and somehow unfamiliar. It wasn't mine anymore. It was Maya's. Every morning, I'd find her rearranging things, the curtains, the photos, even the placement of my husband's portrait. "It looks better this way," she'd say lightly, her voice wrapped in confidence. Armand would just nod, never noticing that the change she made wasn't just in the decor. It was in the balance of our home. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw her directing the maid. "Auntie likes her tea strong," I said kindly, trying to help. She looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, don't worry. Armand prefers it lighter. We'll all just have that." Her words were soft. But the message was sharp. This house was hers to run now. Armand, my son who once checked in on me every evening after work, now spent his nights laughing with her behind closed doors. I told myself it was just new love. Every mother wants her child to be happy, even if that happiness no longer includes her. But slowly my meals became solitary, my voice softer, my presence smaller. One evening, I sat on the veranda waiting for them to return from a party. The clock ticked past midnight. When they finally walked in, Maya's laughter filled the air like perfume. She was radiant, her mother beside her, dressed in glittering jewelry. My heart skipped as my eyes fell on her wrists. Those bangles. The same ones I had given to Maya on her wedding day. But they weren't on Maya. They were on her mother. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she borrowed them. Maybe Maya had asked her to wear them for luck. But then Maya caught my gaze and smiled. A slow, knowing smile that froze me where I stood. "Beautiful, aren't they?" she said. I thought they suited her better, Her mother chuckled. Your son has good taste, dear. Such generous children you have. Armand said nothing. He just looked down, pretending to fix his cufflink, as if silence could erase the cruelty of that moment. I stood there, my heart beating so hard it hurt to breathe. I wanted to ask why. Why would my son give away what his father had gifted me with love and promise? But no words came out. I turned away, whispering only to myself. Some gifts were never meant to be taken. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. I kept hearing their laughter, that easy comfort they shared, while my wrists, once heavy with gold and memory, now felt lighter than ever. I pressed my hand against my chest and tried to calm the ache. Something in me changed that night. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something deeper. The quiet realization that the son I had raised with love had learned to look away from my pain, and the girl who now ruled this house wore her pride like a crown. But as I drifted into restless sleep, one thought refused to leave me. If they could take the bangles once, what else might they take next? The next morning, the house was filled with sunlight, but to me it felt dim, heavy. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen the night before. Maya's mother wearing my wedding bangles as if they'd always been hers. I tried to convince myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Maya had lent them for a day. Maybe Armand didn't realize what those bangles meant. But when I walked into the living room and saw the two of them laughing, sipping coffee, my heart knew the truth before my mind could accept it. Still, I forced a smile. Good morning, I said softly. Maya barely looked up. Morning, Ma, she replied, her voice smooth as silk, yet distant, the kind that keeps you out without saying so. Armand was scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice the tension. You slept okay? I asked. He nodded, eyes still on the screen. I wanted to reach across the silence and remind him that I was the same mother who once stayed up through his fevers, who fed him with her own hands when money was short. But he wouldn't look at me. Later that evening, we had guests, a small family dinner to celebrate Maya's new job. I wore a simple sari, not to outshine anyone, just to feel presentable. When Maya's mother arrived again, dressed in glitter and perfume, the first thing my eyes went to were her wrists. My bangles gleamed under the chandelier. My husband's last gift. My memories. My blessings, now shining on another woman's hands. I couldn't breathe. The laughter around me sounded far away. Finally, I asked quietly, Where did you get those? The room fell silent. Everyone turned. Maya's mother blinked, feigning surprise. Oh, these? Your son gave them to me. He said I reminded him of you. She smiled proudly. My son froze. His fingers tightened around his glass. But he said nothing. I looked at him, waiting, pleading with my eyes for him to speak, to say this wasn't true. But all I got was his silence. That silence cut deeper than any word ever could. Maya leaned forward, a smirk playing on her lips. I thought it was a sweet gesture. After all, she's like a mother to me, and she deserved something beautiful. My voice trembled. Those bangles were from my wedding. They were your father's gift to me. Armand sighed, still avoiding my gaze. Ma, please don't make this a big deal. They're just bangles. Just bangles. That phrase echoed in my head over and over. To him it was nothing. To me it was everything. The love, the years, the sacrifices, all reduced to just bangles. I stood there for a moment longer, fighting the tears that burned behind my eyes. Then I turned and walked out quietly, my heart hollow, my footsteps echoing through the house that no longer felt mine. That night, when the lights went out, I opened the small wooden box where I kept the rest of my jewelry, my mother's chain, my wedding earrings, the gold coin my husband once placed in my palm for our future. The box was empty. Every piece was gone. My knees gave way. I sat on the floor, staring into the emptiness, the truth finally crashing down on me. This wasn't carelessness or misunderstanding. It was betrayal. Wrapped in smiles, and somewhere in the next room I could still hear their laughter, soft and victorious, The morning after that heartbreak felt like walking through the ruins of my own life. Every sound, every corner of the house reminded me that I no longer belonged there. Yet I didn't speak. Silence became my shield, the only dignity I had left. I woke early, as always. The smell of breakfast no longer came from my hands. Maya had taken over the kitchen, commanding the maid with authority I never had to use. "Make less oil," she'd say sharply. "Armand doesn't like greasy food." Armand nodded, not even glancing my way. Once he couldn't eat unless I served him myself. Now, I was just another presence in the background, seen but no longer needed. I learned to move quietly, like a shadow that didn't disturb their world. I swept the veranda, watered the plants, folded the clothes, not because anyone asked, but because it was the only thing that kept me from breaking. People say silence is peaceful, but mine was heavy, suffocating, full of swallowed words. Sometimes I'd hear Maya talking on the phone with her friends. "She's still here," she'd whisper, her voice dripping with irritation. Yes, my husband's mother. You know how these old women are, always acting like saints." Each word struck me harder than the last. I never confronted her. Instead, I smiled when she looked my way, as if I hadn't heard a thing. Because I had learned, when the world wants you small, silence can be the loudest rebellion. Days turned into weeks. One afternoon, as I was cleaning the bookshelf, I found a photo, our old family picture. Armand as a boy, standing beside me, his father's hand resting proudly on his shoulder. My husband's eyes seemed to look right at me through the glass, kind yet firm. I could almost hear his voice again, soft but steady. "Never let them take what's yours." That evening, I went through the old cabinet, searching for any papers my husband might have left behind. Something inside me told me to look deeper. Behind an old stack of saris, I found a small wooden photo frame. The picture inside was faded, but the back felt uneven. When I turned it over, I noticed a thin layer of cardboard glued tightly. My heart began to race. I pried it open carefully. Hidden behind the photo was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, the edges brittle. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Inside was my husband's handwriting. "Everything I've built, every property, every piece of jewelry, all belongs to you. I trust you to protect what's ours. These papers will serve as proof if anyone ever questions it." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears spilling down silently. My husband's voice seemed to fill the room again. He had known. He had prepared for this moment, even after death. That night, I sat by the window with the letter in my lap. Outside, I could hear Maya laughing on a video call, showing off her new clothes. My son's laughter joined hers, echoing through the walls that once carried our family's prayers. I realized that silence had protected me long enough. It was time to let it serve another purpose, to plan. The next morning, I went to the market, carrying the letter safely tucked inside my purse. From there, I took a rickshaw straight to the lawyer's office, an old friend of my late husband. He read the papers carefully, adjusting his glasses. "Your husband was wise," he said gently. "Legally, everything here is under your name. The house, the jewelry, even the accounts. No one can take them without your consent." For the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt power. Quiet, steady power. When I returned home, Maya greeted me with her usual half-smile. "Went shopping, Ma?" she asked. I smiled back, calm and unshaken. "Yes," I replied softly. "For something very valuable." She didn't understand then, but soon she would. That night, I placed the letter under my pillow and whispered to myself, "Your silence is over." And though the house was still filled with laughter not my own, I finally knew. The next time they tried to take what was mine, they'd find a very different woman standing in their way. The envelope trembled in my hands as I walked out of the house, careful not to attract Maya's attention. Every step felt heavy, yet strangely liberating. For the first time in weeks, I carried something that belonged to me, not just in memory, but in law, in reality. The lawyer's office was quiet. the kind of silence that made you feel every heartbeat. I handed him the yellowed envelope, watching closely as he carefully examined each document. His eyes widened slightly at the first glance. Then he adjusted his glasses and studied the papers more thoroughly. "Your husband was careful," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "Everything here, the house, the accounts, the jewelry, including those wedding bangles, is legally under your name. No one can claim them without your consent. Not your son, not Maya, not even her family." A warmth spread through my chest, mingled with a bitter taste of the weeks I had spent in silence and humiliation. I had been wronged, yes, but now I had the truth on my side. Every small injustice I had endured, every dismissive look, every whispered insult, all of it could be undone. Yet I remained calm. Power doesn't scream. It waits, and when the moment is right, it strikes. On my way home, I kept the envelope pressed against my heart. The sun was setting, painting the city in warm shades of gold and orange. From a distance, the house looked the same, familiar, yet no longer mine in spirit. And yet, now I knew it could be mine again. Back at home, Maya greeted me with her usual haughty smile. "Where were you all day, Ma?" she asked, brushing past me with a flippant air, as if I were invisible. "I had some things to take care of," I said softly, keeping my expression neutral. There was no triumph in my tone yet. This was a quiet game. I had learned long ago that people like her never notice until it's too late. That night, I placed the papers in a small, locked drawer beside my bed. I lit a lamp and sat down, reviewing every line. My husband had planned meticulously. Every clause, every signature, every proof of ownership. It was as if he had foreseen this day, as if he had trusted me to protect what he had built for our family. A knock on the door startled me. It was Maya holding a tray of tea, her smile sharp and rehearsed. "I thought you'd like some tea before bedtime, Ma," she said, placing it on the small table near my chair. I looked at her, unflinching. "Thank you," I murmured, letting her arrogance meet my calm. She lingered for a moment, her eyes flicking to the drawer, though she didn't know what it held. Then she left, humming a tune that no longer belonged in my house. As I sipped the tea, my mind traced the path ahead. I could have confronted her, raised my voice, demanded respect. But that would be ordinary revenge. I had the law, I had truth, and I had patience. Far more powerful weapons than anger. I leaned back and whispered into the quiet room. "Soon you'll see. Everything that was taken will come back." Outside, the wind rattled the windows gently, as if agreeing. My silence, my calm, had grown teeth. And when the right moment arrived, they would realize I was no longer just the quiet mother in the corner. I was the rightful guardian of everything my husband had entrusted to me. The night stretched on, shadows dancing across the walls. Maya's laughter, Armin's avoidance, the home that once rejected me, all of it would change. They had no idea how close they were to losing control of the very house they thought they owned. And I, who had been silent for so long, was ready. The house was buzzing that morning, filled with the kind of excitement that comes when strangers think they're about to own a dream. A group of buyers had arrived, their eyes scanning every room, murmuring about renovations and possibilities. Maya floated around them like a queen showing off her kingdom. She had no idea the kingdom wasn't hers to sell. I watched from the veranda, calm and silent, sipping tea that had gone cold. My fingers brushed the envelope of documents hidden beneath my shawl. This was the moment my husband had prepared for, the moment I had been waiting for. And unlike Maya, I didn't need to yell or argue or cry. Patience was my weapon. The lawyer arrived quietly, a small nod exchanged between us. Maya beamed at him. "Everything ready for the signatures?" she asked, pride dancing in her voice. He smiled politely but didn't answer her. He followed me into the study, and I placed the documents on the desk. One by one, he laid out the legal proofs, ownership papers, the will, property deeds. Everything tied to my name. Maya's laughter floated through the hallway. And I could hear her mother chattering about how lucky Maya was to inherit such a wonderful home. My chest tightened, but I stayed still. Then the lawyer walked to the front door, papers in hand. The buyers were called over. He cleared his throat. Before any agreements are signed, I must inform you that the owner of this property is present, he said, his voice calm yet firm. And she has all legal rights regarding the sale. I stepped into the light, slow and deliberate. Every eye turned to me, some curious, some shocked. Maya's mother froze mid-laugh. Maya's eyes widened, her carefully composed demeanor faltering for the first time. This house belongs to me, I said softly but with authority, feeling the weight of years of silence and endurance lift from my shoulders. All documents, all property, every possession inside, it is mine. The buyers shifted uncomfortably. We didn't know, one of them murmured. Maya stammered. But, Armand, he said nothing, I interrupted, voice steady. Because he thought he could ignore the truth. Because he thought I wouldn't find out. But the truth never hides for long. Her mother's face turned pale. Her perfume-scented confidence crumbled as I held the papers firmly in my hands. She looked at Maya, who now avoided my gaze completely. Armand appeared at the doorway, a mix of guilt and fear written across his face. He started, but no words came out that could undo the wrongs. I simply shook my head. No, Armand, words cannot replace respect. They cannot replace trust. But the law can protect what is mine, as it always should have. The buyers quietly left, murmuring apologies. Maya and her mother stood frozen, realizing their power had evaporated. I let them linger in that uncomfortable silence, savoring the calm justice of the moment. When the door finally closed behind everyone, I felt the weight of the house shift back onto its rightful owner. I walked through each room slowly, remembering the laughter, the memories, the tears, and now, finally, reclaiming them. I turned to Armand, who followed me hesitantly. You see now, I said gently, why some things can never be taken lightly. Not a house, not jewelry, not a mother's love. He nodded, words failing him. Maya and her mother had retreated to the hall, silent and defeated. That night I sat in the study, the papers before me, the house finally quiet under my gaze. For months I had been silent, patient, unnoticed. But silence had its strength. And tonight, the house and my dignity were restored. Yet deep inside, I knew the story wasn't over. Armand's realization had just begun. Maya's arrogance had been humbled, but lessons like this linger, and some wounds take time to heal. As the wind rattled the windows softly, I whispered, almost to myself, this house will never be taken again. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. The house had quieted down by evening, the tension from the halted sale still lingering like smoke in the air. Maya and her mother had retreated to the far corner of the living room, whispering and casting wary glances at me. And there he was, my son, Armand, standing awkwardly by the window, guilt written across his face. He hadn't spoken to me properly in weeks, avoided eye contact as if the sight of me reminded him of a mistake too large to face. Tonight, he seemed smaller somehow, shrunken by shame and realization. I watched him hesitate before finally taking a step toward me, each one tentative, as though he feared the wrong words might shatter the fragile bridge between us forever. Ma, he began, his voice breaking. I didn't understand. I didn't see. I raised a hand gently, stopping him. Armand, I said softly, words alone cannot fix this. You've learned something now, but learning is not enough. Respect is not given after the fact. It must be shown every day. He sank to his knees before me, tears welling in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Ma, I was blind. I let her take what was yours. I didn't see the pain. His confession hung in the air, heavy with remorse. For a long moment, I said nothing. I remembered the sleepless nights I had endured, the meals I had prepared, the sacrifices I had made silently, trusting that he understood love, trust, and duty. Now to hear his regret, I felt a storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, but also the faintest spark of relief. "You were raised with love," I said, voice steady but gentle. "And yet you let yourself be swayed. Not by me, but by greed, by arrogance, by someone else's influence. That is your lesson." He bowed his head, weeping quietly. "I'll never forget, Ma. I'll make it right. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." I reached down and touched his shoulder, not as a punishment, but as a bridge. "Forgiveness is not a prize you claim," I told him. "It's a gift I choose to give. And it must be earned with understanding, with action, with the respect you showed me too late." Armin nodded, swallowing hard. "I will," he whispered. "I promise. Please, guide me. Teach me how to be the son you deserve." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of warmth in the cold house. The path ahead would be long. The trust that had been broken could not be mended in a single night. But this, his genuine remorse, was a beginning. Maya and her mother remained in the corner, silent now, watching the exchange with wary eyes. They had lost their power, their arrogance replaced with uncertainty. And in that quiet, I realized that justice had not only been served through the law and patience, but through truth and awakening. I stood slowly, placing a hand on Armin's shoulder. "Remember this moment," I said. "The next time you face a choice between what is right and what is easy, let your heart guide you, not someone else's greed. Let respect and love be your compass." He nodded, tears falling freely. "I understand, Ma. I will never forget this lesson." And as I looked around the house, the same home that had once felt like a battlefield, I knew the tide had turned. The silence that had protected me, the patience that had preserved me, and the quiet strength that had guided me, all had brought us to this moment. But even as forgiveness began to take root, I knew the final lessons were still to come. True respect once lost must be proven, not just spoken. And I would be watching. The house was quiet now, finally. The laughter that once mocked me had faded, replaced by a calm I hadn't felt in months. I walked through each room slowly, my fingers brushing over walls and furniture that had witnessed both love and betrayal. Every corner held memories, some sweet, some painful, but they were mine, and I had reclaimed them. I had moved into a small, peaceful apartment nearby, a place where I could breathe without fear, where my days were my own. The quiet mornings were mine to fill with tea, reflection, and the gentle hum of the world outside. It was modest, yes, but every inch carried dignity, independence, and the satisfaction of standing firm when it mattered most. Months later, Armin came to visit, his steps hesitant at first. He carried a small wrapped package. I recognized the shape instantly in my wedding bangles. His eyes were red from tears, his voice thick with remorse. "I'm sorry, Ma," he whispered. "I never should have let them leave your hands." I was blind, but I understand now. I took the package from him, feeling the familiar weight of gold and memory press against my palms. I didn't speak immediately. Words weren't needed. These bangles weren't just jewelry. They were a lesson, a testament to love, patience, and the endurance of a mother's heart. I smiled softly, placing them carefully on the shelf. Not to wear, not for wealth, but for the story they carried, the proof of what had been lost, what had been reclaimed, and what mattered most. Armand knelt beside me, seeking forgiveness. Yet I knew that the real gift wasn't just the bangles. It was the lesson that respect, love, and integrity can never be taken lightly, and that even in moments of betrayal, the quiet strength of truth and patience will always find its way. We sat together in silence for a long while, the past lingering like a shadow, yet the future stretching out before us with hope. I felt peace, not because everything had been perfect, but because I had stayed true to myself. True wealth, I realized, wasn't in gold or property. It wasn't in what was taken or given. True wealth was in dignity, in patience, and in the respect that endured, even when hands were empty. I held my heart a little lighter that evening, knowing that the lessons we learn, the love we nurture, and the courage we carry. These are treasures no one can steal. And for the first time in a long while, I felt complete. The end.